Hello and welcome to the holy shit. This is the ninth episode of Cerulean Skies RPG podcast. Wow, this is a weekly podcast aimed at the myriad of RPG subjects that we here at Cerulean Skies are passionate about. So it's aimed to be a mix of produced podcasting, live stream discussion, and all that fun stuff. So we always encourage folks to engage with these talks through the Twitch chat, on Discord, on Twitter. Well, maybe not Twitter anymore. Maybe Mastodon. I don't know. Nah, screw that. Um, and any other aspects of social media. So I'm your host, Joey, and today I'm joined by Andrew
Hello.
and Nurvuss.
Hey, thank you very much for having me.
Thank you guys for being here. You guys are very sweet. And as we always try to do with new contributors to this show, we're going to be talking about some of our favorite RPGs to get a feel for each other's preferences. And we're going to touch on a topic that I've been trying to get people to talk about for a while on this podcast, and it's integration of narrative slash themes and gameplay slash mechanics. So we're going to try not to use the L word. Those of you who watch this podcast or listen to it at least once have heard me drop it, and you know what? Like, I should be censored. It's okay. Some censorship is okay. But basically, we're going to be talking about how stories themes are integrated through gameplay and vice versa. But before we do that, this is going to be a dense topic. It might be very heady. That's okay, man. That's why we're here. That's why I have these lovely boys to chat with me. So, speaking of lovely boys, you guys are new. Tell us about your internet presence. What might some of our viewers or listeners know you for? And Nurvuss, we'll start with you.
Just as I muted myself. I used to write for RPG Fan maybe five or 6 years ago. I sometimes, very rarely, contribute to Hardcore Gaming 101, writing about weird niche stuff. Most recently, I wrote a good chunk of the for the unofficial guide to Shin Megami Tensei, as well as Bitmap's big guide to Japanese role-playing games, the big hardback 600-pager. I contributed a fair share to that. You can find me on Twitch streaming Kusoge, sometimes dressed like a hot dog, and I've started making videos on YouTube about strange video games that I find interesting. I don't necessarily like them, but if you want to hear entirely too many words about this year's Monarch, I got you covered.
Hell yeah, man! You have a nice little resume there. And Andrew, how about you?
Thank you.
Well, I've been doing content on the internet for quite a while, but uh, very little I'd say I'm proud of. I did a lot of machinima, Halo machinima, a GTA machinima pilot, which unfortunately, hey, here's the official announcement. Not picking that up. It's just too big for me. Anyway, now I'm doing like video essays and retrospectives with the big project being a Final Fantasy retrospective series from the perspective of someone who had never finished a Final Fantasy before and trying to put these games into a proper historical and cultural context.
Yeah, and I'm really excited to watch. We were chatting before the podcast began, but I'm really excited to watch these. I was a bad host and did not watch them despite having them in my queue and prepared to watch before the show. But ADD kicked in, and here I am. But yeah, so we will give you. I'll put all the plugs and stuff in because you guys actually very rarely do I have guests on the show who are like are actively doing stuff very ubiquitously. So like there's a lot of stuff to plug, and I'm excited for the viewers or the listeners to check it out. But we will do that at the end of the show, and we will also have links in the description for the podcast, whatever service it's on. So let's begin. Let's talk nicely about some of our favorite RPGs because apparently that's the icebreaker. I don't know, man. I made the format. Who knows? Andrew, we'll start with you, man. What are some of your favorite games? Is Final Fantasy up there now? Curious.
Yes, it is. I can't say that I've been playing through these games in release order in their original versions and not say it's one of my favorites.
Hell yeah.
But on top of that, I grew up with Pokemon, still a big Pokemon fan. Gen 2 is my favorite. Gen 3 is a close second. I don't like Gen 4. I'm sorry, kids. I've been playing for a good chunk of Gen 8 Sword and Shield, I've been playing the official competitive format VGC until COVID happened. As far as Final Fantasy goes, my favorites, I only have done the retrospectives for the first 3 games, but I play the games well in advance. I'm playing 10 right now to give you an idea. My favorites so far are 9, 7, and 6 in that order. 1, 2, 3. I this is a not exactly dated, but it is unfortunately a bit of a sore spot because you can't play it officially anymore. Fantasy Star Universe, Fantasy Star Universe on Xbox 360 played the shit out of that game. Can I
You
say
not play
shit?
that anymore?
Yeah.
Uh,
Is it just like
no,
completely down?
yeah, the 360 version went down in like 2013,
I was thinking
2012.
about checking that out actually.
There's a fan server, Clementine, but I haven't checked it out. I don't know how active it is. And Persona 4 and 5. Persona 5 got me back into the genre and video games in general at a dark point in my life. And Fallout, specifically Fallout's 1 and New Vegas, I love those games.
I before I pass the mic here to Nurvuss, I want to say that I don't know anyone else who got into competitive Gen 8 other than myself. I was ranked top 100 in Master Ball singles when that game came out.
Singles though.
Yeah, single. Oh, and doubles, whatever the format was called for that.
Doubles,
I beat
BGC.
a bunch of YouTubers, and you could probably find some of the matches on there.
I got matched up against Aaron Zhang once, and I beat him.
Oh hell yeah, dude! Fuck yeah, let's go.
Yeah, that was a huge moment of validation for me.
Let's go. Nurvuss, what about you, man? Do you have any lovely braggadocious things like this to speak of?
I got started super early. I became a very, very early console RPG devotee. So like I was cutting my teeth on Fantasy Star when I could barely read, and
Hell yeah.
E1 for the Master System. Yeah, the Aaron versus Dark Decked. That localization with all the these and thous. I played a hell of a lot of that. I had no business playing any of this stuff when I was just learning to read, but I found them endlessly fascinating. Joey, I hear you name check Final Fantasy Legend quite a bit. I think that was the first RPG I ever owned. And I'd play the hell out of that. I don't know, like my dad was a big appreciator of fantasy art, so like our house was full of like a lot of like Frank Frazetta Conan art. But
Shit.
weirdly, he really hated the idea of me playing RPGs because he thought I'd become like some kind of Dungeons and Dragons nerd. I think he wanted me to like embrace the masculine ideal of Conan's physique, but definitely not in a homosexual way, rather than like going on quests. But I
Quest
became
for
really
booty, no, not that kind.
no. I became pretty obsessed with the genre as a whole as a kid, and like back then, to get your fix, you'd have to like sweatily play a whole bunch of trash. So you'd like, I don't know, you'd rent Beyond the Beyond or Virtual Highlight and pretend you were having a really good time.
Oh,
But
dude,
now
that's so real though. That's too real, man.
there's so much out there now that like there's something for everybody, and you don't have to play the stuff that's not for you. But like in terms of stuff that I really dig, I'm an insufferable Mega 10 fan. I like your Xenogears, your Earthbounds. Your guest Mikhail a few weeks ago brought up some stuff I really, really dig, like Brainlord and Brandish, like
Oh
these
hell
really
yeah,
hostile dungeon crawlers. And I'm really into lots of old Telenet and microcabin RPGs that I would be loath to actually recommend to anybody.
hell yeah. Also, the sheer I don't know if you saw the sheer incredulity on my face when you were talking about you don't have to play those games, and then motherfucker, you just played Monarch. What?
Hey, look, nobody's perfect.
I don't know what that game is, but I'm laughing anyway.
Some insane people who don't like Star Ocean games may or may not have just bought Star Ocean 6.
Oh,
you know?
man.
So nobody's perfect, okay?
Okay,
I
let me just
downloaded
say
the demo for that based on Joey's recommendation. I still haven't booted it up.
It might
I-
actually be good.
it's
Did they
okay. It's
make
a
a good Star
6.8.
Ocean?
It's a 6.8 at the highest.
That's a good Star Ocean, probably.
That's a good Star Ocean. Yeah. I played through both paths already, and it's a video game. That's about like, is it a disappointing video game? No, because there is nowhere to go but up from 5, right? So like, but I would recommend it if it's something that, okay, I was talking to Frank about this earlier, and folks of the channel, if you like RPGs, watch Super RPG Friends on Thursday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. But we were talking a bit about the game because I think he's just wrapping it up now, and this is he described it as RPG comfort food, and I think that is exactly what it is. So if you want to spend $60, I mean, my thing has always been like, play what you want, like spend what you want, but just know that like if you buy something at retail price, like you probably should be playing it, like just don't expect an 8 out of 10 or anything like that. But it's a good, nice piece of comfort food. So if that's what you're looking for, it'll be a palate cleanser after Monarch, I'm sure. Uh, So yeah, go for it. I would recommend Star Ocean 6 100% to pretty much almost anyone, unless you really hate that kind of style. But why are you listening to this? I don't know. But yeah, really cool list of games, man. You guys are my people, I swear. That's awesome. Uh, Not that I've ever really like had guests on the show who I've been like, oh, your taste sucks. That's lame anyway. But a lot of overlap here, so that's really cool. Um, and SMT, damn, there's a lot to say about SMT in the topic that we have for this evening. And usually we spend a little bit more time on this section of the podcast, but I think there's a lot to say on our subtopic for this evening. So, anything you guys want to talk about your taste before we switch gears?
Not really.
Cool.
Yeah, all good.
All right, let's go. So topic here is the integration of themes in gameplay, right? Let's define these terms a bit. Andrew, we'll start with you. How do you define integrating themes in gameplay? Like, what is your description of this concept?
So without using the L word, um, integration of themes in gameplay and story in gameplay, character in gameplay is using the the hallmarks and systems of the game to help support or tell the story and prop up the themes you're trying to explore. For example, in Final Fantasy IV, because I'm working on that video and I'm playing that game like 4 times. In the scene where Cecil becomes a paladin, in order to actually like be worthy of such a role, he has to defeat his past self. But his past self is his inner darkness. It's represented by a dark knight who is constantly attacking him. The only way to defeat that darkness isn't to bludgeon it, although like mechanically you can. It's just gonna take a while and it's not gonna be fun.
Mm-hmm.
It's by doing what you're straight up told to do. Like the true paladin would sheath their blade. You don't defeat your darkness. You accept that it is a part of you. That is a melding of themes and gameplay. Similarly, also in Final Fantasy IV, on a smaller note, Tella is on a brief quest to unlock Meteo or Meteor, depending on your translation. Is there a translation that calls it Meteor, or is it always Meteo officially?
I think it's Meteor in the Pixel remaster and the newest, or the PSP maybe. Oh no, the 3D. Sorry, maybe the 3D version says Meteor.
That's right. I did just finish the 3D version. I think it said that. I've got shit to say about that. Well, not shit.
Is it like a character limit thing? Maybe when it was with the old.
Yeah, with 4 probably.
It was. But anyway, so Meteor. I'm just going to say Meteor for consistency. Meteor in the narrative, like he's told, like, hey, this is a really powerful spell. You're old. You would probably die if you use this spell. And Tell's just like, nah, fuck you, kid. I'll do what I want. And when he learns the spell, it's part of the spell list. Like in the game, you can go to it like during a battle, but you can't select it because it requires 99 MP. And Tella, in the original version, can only get up to 98. He can't get any more MP than that. 90 in the 3D version. So that's another minor example of a blending of gameplay and narrative.
Yeah, no,
So
that's really
very
good.
yeah, very
That's a
minor
really good point.
examples, but it gets the point across.
Yeah, no, I like that example a lot. I think Final Fantasy is a really good touchstone for this subject in general. But Nervous, how about you, man? How do you describe this concept?
I think this is the kind of thing that can be quite rare to this genre, but it's always special when it shows up. I think a lot of Japanese role-playing games in particular kind of require you to unfocus your eyes when it comes to um, looking at theme and narrative with mechanic backing it up. I'm thinking about for example, the difference of what death means in, say, a game that's directed by Yasumi Matsuno, and what violence and death means in something like Earthbound. So you've got, on one hand you've got a story about uh, the actual the actual human cost of war and conquest, um, and on the other you've got a breezy story that, like, if you take it literally and not metaphorically, it's about a young boy going out and bludgeoning a bunch of dogs. you know
Are you
um
telling me Earthbound is not about a young boy who has a vendetta against his neighborhood dogs?
it's quite possible. It does get kind of dark later, huh?
Yeah,
um
it definitely does.
like I thought my girlfriend would be interested in playing one of the Atelier games, and we got to, like, the first battle where you fight a cute little hamster in the forest, and she got really upset at the idea of having to bash a hamster on the head. I kind of felt the same way when I recently played Trails of Cold Steel 3, with Reen the teacher takes his star pupils out into the woods to beat up a bunch of forest animals. And it's like, this is what you're sending your kids to school for, huh? Yeah, I'm really not supposed to think too much about this. Um, so some of the interesting subversions of ways that certain games get around that, like Ooblets, which finally came out of early access this year. Do you know Ooblets?
Yes, that's on my Steam list. I believe it's yeah.
Yeah, the kind
I
of
think that
farming
Kyle
simulator
mentioned it.
slash Pokemon kind of a deal. They When it was in early access, it had a combat system, and they quickly replaced that with, like, having a dance off, which kind of fits the tone a little bit more. And similarly, there's Disco Elysium, which kind of has all of its major encounters as dialogue battles. Which
Yeah.
I guess, that even harkens back to Deus Ex, where you can find alternatives to take down your adversaries. There's boss battles that you will be forced into, but if you've done enough exploring earlier, like, there's Gunther. You can find his cyborg kill phrase and say it to him to blow him up.
Oh
That
yeah.
kind of stuff. I dig that a whole lot.
Yeah, and I think that there's a really interesting I guess like convergence between like WRPG,
Mm.
ImSims, and like JRPG stuff. And I think we'll get to that a little bit more too as we discuss this. But I do want to pull back just a bit because you guys gave really good examples. I do kind of want to like talk a little bit about some of these terms, and not like in a I guess didactic way, but just kind of like in a for clarity, right? Like, and just for our own peace of mind, because when we talk about like themes, what do we mean? Like we're talking about like a message or a communication of something, like whether that be like through the story, like through something like it's not necessarily like a literal detail, right? It's not necessarily like Cecil becomes a paladin, and that means that Cecil's a good guy, right? That's not what a theme is. A theme
Right.
is more like you said exactly, Andrew. It's like, having to accept that part of yourself and coming clean, right? And so a theme is always a little like it. Yeah, you can argue intent of message, right? You can say, oh, the developers or the writers meant to say this, but a good theme is always something that you could transpose over multiple different concepts, right? So some people that might, this is a really corny fucking example, but it's what's coming to my head. Like some people might interpret Cecil's transformation as like maybe like coming clean from addiction, or having having a part of yourself that you hated. Like there was definitely a time when I played Xbox Live and I used the word gay as a pejorative, and I hate myself for that. That was my Dark Knight phase because the evil kingdom of Baron, aka my high school, was telling me that it was okay to do that, right? So like, yeah, you can interpret that as however you want. I think that's the strength of themes. I think I might have dropped this stupid thing on RPG Friends, but uh, John Carpenter said that movies don't have messages, they have themes, right? Like something doesn't
Right.
overtly mean this, you can interpret it to mean as this. And that's the beauty of art. So,
Unless it's God's not dead, in which case, well, do I have to finish the
no,
sentence?
right. But yeah, like just the concept of themes are divorcing literal details with a message or communication. I think that that's kind of like when I personally say the word theme, what I mean. And I do, because we did say a bit of the L word. So the L word meaning ludonarrative, meaning like I
Game.
think ludo
That's
is
one.
that's one. That's one. That means like a game, right, in Latin or some Latin-based language. So game narrative, right? So that what that means is just like exactly what we're talking about, where gameplay and mechanics meet story. And by extension, you have the concept of ludonarrative dissonance, which is a fucking hilarious, dumb idiot. Like, uh, MLA, like say put this word in your college essay to look smart, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I
But
feel like the term. Sorry to cut you off.
no, you're
The,
fine.
the
Go ahead.
term the term ludonarrative dissonance has its place. It is a term with value, but it also is a term that I feel a lot of people overuse or misuse, and not enough people talk about the inverse, ludonarrative cohesion.
True. Yeah, where that stuff actually works out and it feels like there is a, like a I almost said cohesion because it is, but a cohesiveness. Let's say that.
Yeah,
But yeah, the concept of ludonarrative difference or dissonance is like the discrepancy between how the narrative is told and the execution mechanics. Really good example of this when you beat. Okay, when you get into a fight, and again, I do want to clarify that we're specifically talking in the context of RPGs. This whole discussion, this topic, is markedly different in other games, I think, and
right.
it's going to be really difficult to not use other genres as an example, but I feel like that's a challenge. But a really good example of ludonarrative dissonance that's an easy kind of thing to think about is let's say there's a scripted fight where you have to lose. Trails has a lot of this. And then you beat that ass. You beat that ass, and you're supposed to lose, and then the fight ends, and it's like your party members act like they just lost, or like the antagonist talks shit and gets hit, fucks around and finds out, and
He has to unleash the power in his left arm, to knock you out at the last minute.
exactly. So I always think, and like I feel like those are the two, I guess the binary of this kind of discussion. That being said, I don't think that there's something inherently bad about ludonarrative dissonance. Okay, I'm going to stop saying the word. I don't think there's something bad about that kind of dissonance because it's a video game, right? Like,
Right.
you want to have it be sometimes that like discrepancy is interesting. It makes it kind of it's a little bit like more raw, I don't know. And
It's
then
almost like an unreliable narrator, and if that works in other forms of media and fiction, why not? Why not do it in play as well?
I think
totally
it's more because I think the unreliable narrator idea. The the thing about that is it doesn't totally apply for games because of the interactivity of it. I think like unreliable narrators in games where the player character is the narrator that is unreliable, you have to be very careful about doing that. Like for example, Final Fantasy VII pulled that off, I think, pretty well, but that's because of how connected yet disconnected the player is from Cloud. It really is the interactivity part that makes that kind of idea difficult for games. In any other medium, not so much because at that point, because in books, music, film, television, you are an observer. Regardless of what you do, that is still there. Whereas with a game, whether the story continues or not, and how the story and how events play out to an extent is dependent on your interaction with it.
Totally.
Yeah.
And so that's that kind of that answered sort of a question, but Nurvuss, how about you, man? Do you think it's necessary to integrate narrative themes into gameplay or vice versa?
Oh, I think it depends on what you're going for and what you're trying to achieve. I think it's great if you can do it. Gosh, I'm not entirely sure what to say here, because I think this genre is on the whole kind of bad at it. Uh, you have I don't know. You've got two distinct experiences going on with a role playing game, specifically a Japanese role playing game, and that is in engaging with its mechanics on a very system driven and tactile level, and also getting swept up in a fantasy or science fiction story. And it's great when the twain meet. Sometimes the latter is just set dressing for the former. I'm thinking like Etrian Odyssey, where um, you're you're just exploring. That's it. That's it. You're just exploring. And I guess a lot of those systems serve serve those serve those dungeon crawlers incredibly well. But maybe it's because the setup is just so slight there. You know.
Yeah, yeah. No, I feel that. I think that kind of detachment almost it's an urgency. It's sort of like you're just trying to get this thing out. And
Mm.
you look at like that this kind of stuff logistically, obviously, games have a budget, they have a timeline, et cetera, et cetera. Uh and I think that like, that having that perfect integration is always going to be something that's incredibly difficult. That's the great struggle. And we've gone, if you look at this historically, and Andrew, you've been doing these FF retrospectives, so I think at this point might actually hit home for you a little bit, is that like we've come to the point with this form of art of video games where we can start thinking about this now. Like when FF1 came out in 87, and even, a little after that in the 90s, when FF6 came out in 93,
94.
94, when FF7 came out in 97, like, we're still trying to figure out what works, right? It's like film, right? Cinema starts out and it's like Zoe tropes and shitty like circus performances, not shitty,
The
but
Nickelodeon.
yeah, Nickelodeon stuff, and then it starts to become more of like an established art, and then you had like 70 years before people were really getting into the thick of it. And I think video games now they have that privilege, right, of being to the point now where the the intersection of technology and communication has come so far with that art form that we can start talking about this kind of thing, right?
Right.
And
And now games can start culling ideas and presentation uh, sort of techniques from other mediums, television and film especially. And I want to explore this in a video of my own at some point in the future, concerning specifically like prestige games that really go hard in trying to ape uh, these really lavish, highly acclaimed, critical TV dramas and films. And so we can do that now. And at that point, it's a matter of marrying that with the interactivity.
I see Solstice on that topic. I see Solstice in the chat has mentioned Uncharted. It's like so like if Indiana Jones like murdered the population of Rhode Island and was still seen to be a good guy, you know?
yeah, and you know what?
Just this absurd pairing of video game conventions with this sort of AAA prestige
We did it,
tone.
Patrick. We saved the city.
Well, that's a really good point. The concept of like hegemonic ideas that are portrayed through gameplay to make like it's almost like you wonder if there's like a sort of agenda there, right? Like you're writing this narrative to have this protagonist do these things, they hit these plot points, right? Um, a lot of this stuff is like, is it a power fantasy? Is it like again, we're talking about themes, so is it a theme? is the concept of Reen taking a bunch of kids out and back and showing them how to beat the shit out of a bunny rabbit. Is that like, is that really what this has to be, right? And it's like we accept that. We accept it as something that you just see in an RPG. We were talking a bit about Star Ocean 6 before, and I was like, oh, it's JRPG comfort food, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, are you just supposed to accept that? Like, I don't mean to like, I'm not shitting on Star Ocean, but like, are we just supposed to accept these conventions as are, or as is? Or are we, like, what can we do to make the integration of themes and gameplay a little bit more, I guess, real? Does it have to be real? Right?
Yeah,
You mentioned oh, sorry. Please go right ahead.
it's like I've been stewing on this for a while, and I think that do you need to incorporate themes into gameplay? No, I don't think you do. I think that a game should be at the very least intuitive, and it should be fun on some level, because there are games where they are not fun, and that's part of the intent.
Right.
It Yeah, they're trying to say something in doing so. If so, no, I don't think that games need to incorporate elements of their stories or their themes into the gameplay. But if an opportunity presents itself to do so, I think that the experience could only be better for it.
Cool.
You
Nurvuss, you're gonna say something?
mentioning Yeah, you mentioning power fantasies, and following on with what Andrew said about um something not being fun, and that's the point. I think a prime example here, love him or hate him, Yoko Taro, and love it or hate it, probably hate it, Drakengard, which interrogates like what would it mean for the psyche to be to be a whirlwind of death, a Dynasty Warriors character, and only a terrifying monster, an awful human being, could do that.
Yeah, I like to think of Drakengard as the I see what he was I smell what he was stepping in with that game. Uh and I fucking hate it because I hate
It's
playing
unbearable.
Drakengard. It's an
It's
With
fascinating, but it's unbearable.
with that metaphor, how couldn't you?
but like I mean I get it. Like I get the concept, right? It's but to me the execution is wearing 3D glasses to a movie theater to see a movie in 3D. I can't see 3D cuz my eyes suck. When you put on 3D glasses, it's red and blue, baby. That's all you got. And it's like I see what you're doing. You're trying to change up the medium, and I really respect that. So I always say that I respect Yoko Taro's original visions of stuff way more than I actually like playing it. And yeah, I don't know, man. Drakengard though, like I feel like that's a little too rough for me.
I
It,
can get down with Nier, and I'm really enjoying those voice of cards games. But yeah, Drakengard is a rough putt. I mean, maybe check that out on YouTube, but
yeah,
don't put it out.
yeah. But I mean,
Joey,
there's
I appreciate that you're regularly using like similes and metaphors to film, because that's my degree.
oh hell yeah, dude. Well, damn, you're definitely my people because that's all I talk about. So hell yeah.
I just
Yeah,
got
I
my
think.
first Criterion Blu-ray.
What'd you
I
get?
think.
Yojimbo and Sanjuro, and partially I did that for Final Fantasy retrospective.
Hell,
Good
hell
choice,
yeah.
though.
Shit, if you want a cinematic metaphor for Yoko Taro, hmm, maybe I almost want to say
Swear to God, if you say Ed Wood.
no, no, no. Wait, maybe even something like French New Wave, because like
You think so?
yeah,
Interesting.
because it was like okay, Breathless, hard film to watch visually at the time, right? Because there's so much shit happening and like the cuts were not like what were considered, good or whatever. So you're forced into this narrative that you have kind of a vague intrigue with normally because it's like crime and whatever, like human fascination with that kind of stuff. But it's rough as hell, and it's like sometimes the themes get lost in that. There's too much eschewing of actual enjoyment in favor of stuff like, oh, it's art, and it's like, bro, sometimes just art is just shit. It's just poorly made. And that's okay.
Shots
I feel
fired.
that. I've seen many a film in college like that, particularly Russian ones.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So
Can't get
like,
down with that 7-hour version of Solaris. Of Stellaris.
no, Andrei Rublev. That's the super long one that
Mm,
Tarkovsky did. But wait, is there a 7-hour Solaris? If there is, I want to watch that.
I think it's that long.
That's Solaris is long. Solaris like 3 and a half hours, but yeah, that's oof, oh
That
boy.
that or watch Andy Warhol's Empire.
Oh,
Not
that's true.
Russian, but
Shit, what's the equivalent of
Um,
that, man? What's the video
um,
game equivalent of that?
Cookie Clicker?
Yeah, something.
Killer is dead. I don't know.
Yeah, Killer's Dead. I'm sure it'll come to us, but yeah, sorry, but getting back a little bit on track, because of, like, the three people who watch this will get these film references, but like, um, I do want to talk a little bit about gameplay that sort of breaks up the pace of stuff. Doesn't necessarily reinforces themes, but it reinforces maybe God, this player feel, like how you feel in the moment, like breaking up of the monotony or the mechanics to try to like switch things up or try to put you in the story. Maybe that is the L word, I don't know. But a good example of this is FF9, because, well, maybe not a good example in terms of how much I enjoy it, but FF9 has a lot of moments where you're like stealthing around stuff, little mini games that are inserted into the plot to like sort of make you feel the narrative, right? Like or even FF12, when you're running around telling people don't believe Andor's lies. Like, that gets tiring real fast, man. But like, it's sick. It's like you're doing the thing. Metal Gear Solid has, sorry to bring up a non-RPG game, but like, it has a lot of that like sort of meta stuff where you have to think outside of the box of playing the game.
I have to
Um,
think on the back of the box.
or on the back of the box, literally. Yeah. Damn, that was good. Ease 8 has a big part of this. No spoilers for this game, but there is a point in this game where, Ease 8 is a very like generically presented JRPG. And I don't mean that in a bad way, it's just like bright colors, anime hair, at all, silent protagonists, it hits all those marks. But in the middle of that, not even the middle, 30% through that game, there's like a random fucking MacGyver Columbo murder mystery, and
Mm.
like it switches up from like anime whoop ass pressing two buttons to kill a giant horde of enemies to who's the killer now, like I think that kind of stuff is really interesting to me. I was wondering if you guys had any examples of this.
Yeah, I know right off the bat, I don't even think I have to really elaborate on this one, but Final Fantasy VII, with how frequently mini games pop up in that, whether or not you think they're good is a whole other story. Um, Fallout, uh, with the exceptions, I'd say probably of like 3, 4, and 76, uh, there's like a whole bunch of different kinds of quests that go on to kind of break up what you're trying to do. Like, oh, are you just talking to someone? Are you stealthing around? Are you planting a thing? Are you going to a place to take a thing? Um, and because of how open ended Fallout's 1, 2, and New Vegas are, you can tackle so many of these quests in different ways. So it's like, oh, I don't want to do a stealth quest. I'm just going to kill everything here. Or, oh, I don't want to go and find a part. I have the science skill or whatever. I can just like try my luck on this right now. Or, hey, I've maxed out my speech. I don't have to fight Leggett Lanius. So with that in that scenario though, that's kind of more of the game kind of being more tailored to you based on how you've built your character, which I appreciate. It also makes it so the game is not going to be the same every time.
Yeah, yeah. I like, and it's especially like being able to take things at your own pace too, or like having the option to do that is Because I
Yeah,
know if
I like some downtime in the middle of the action.
Yeah.
Like in particular, I really dig quiet moments in horror games. I know that's a different genre, but you know, I liked The Room in Silent Hill 4, The Room. I liked it when Fatal Frame 3 did the same thing with walking around your house during the day. I like these little bits of I guess in that case, it's meant to be a tension breaking moment. But I like having a different view of what's going on in your interactive narrative that is maybe it's not driving the plot forward specifically. You know, you're having a little room to do something else that can get into some ridiculous territory. You know, most of your JRPGs where okay, it's time to fly around the world and do every side quest when the fate of the world hangs in the balance. You know,
yeah,
it's
yeah.
like Final Fantasy 6 and 7 are they're
Yep.
very guilty of that. But
14 has a
that's
moment in
I
Endwalker.
can get down with it. Yeah,
Oh man, that almost like killed me because I love Endwalker. I love the story, and then there was this like one part in it that was like exactly what you're saying in the most hilariously comical way. Like a
well, that's
world-ending
Final
event.
Fantasy, baby.
That's Final Fantasy, baby. A world-ending event. You're moving boxes, bro. Come on, fuck off. You know, like,
Yeah. Yeah. I especially and the thing is too because I used New Vegas as an example. The
That's
way
a
I
good one.
play the way I play New Vegas anymore, I have a mod. I have Fallout Who Vegas because I love Doctor Who. So you get your own TARDIS. You can become a Time Lord if you just kind of put the shit together. So you can do stuff out of order. There's a whole quest line involving Gallifrey and stuff, and if you die, you can regenerate. So it's another way of playing the game. You just play it in a different order. Death isn't really a consequence. It's an opportunity to roll a new character in the same playthrough, and you make your own story out of that, which I always found really fun.
really good way, or I have a good segue with that theme. Romancing Saga 2. You know,
Ooh, yeah.
the whole point
Romantic
is
Saga as a whole.
so, yeah, Romancing Saga as a whole, yeah, but like Romancing Saga 2 because that game is built around the fact that your guys are gonna die. You know, when have you played this, Andrew?
I've never played a Saga.
Okay, so Romancing Saga 2 has like a generational thing. Basically, there's an evil, like a sort of evil force, right? And just simplifying it in the most like
Okay.
just lunchbox way possible. But like an evil force that like is multi-generational. And so like there are different side quests. The side quests are very similar to WRPGs or Fallout, where they're like kind of open worlded and they're non-linear and you could kind of do stuff in whatever order. And so if when you either lose your character dies, your main character dies, or you fulfill a certain number of quests, the next generation begins. And the
Hmm.
point of this is to be like even if you die, even if you fail, there's still something that gets passed. So in the remaster, especially, you get to carry over a lot of your skills and all this kind of stuff.
You
And
pick a
there's an
descendant.
interesting. Sorry, go ahead.
You pick a descendant.
Yeah, you pick a descendant. Yeah, you have an actual choice. Is do I want to choose? It's like kind of semi randomly generated. Do I want my next emperor to be the warrior, the mage, or the thief, etc., etc.? And there's an interesting theme and narrative intersection here because, especially in the remaster, you basically have to go around your castle and pick your new party members, but it's clunky and it takes forever, right? So the UX in that concept actually fucking works because it feels like, oh, I have to get back up to snuff again. And maybe I'm Jean-Luc
I actually hadn't thought
Godaring
of it
the
that way.
yeah, I'm definitely fucking like pulling one out
I'm
of my
into it. I'm
ass.
into it.
But like I do think that there is a uniqueness to that. Like to like yeah, it sucks. It's Yoko Taroing, but like it does actually bring up a it makes you think about stuff. Like it actually takes the time. It forces you to take time to do these things and think about your actions and your decisions and your planning and all that kind of stuff. Um,
Kawazu is in particular like a massive tabletop nerd, so
Yes,
I wouldn't be surprised if it was intentional. You know, he
it
is
absolutely
so
is.
into
oh yeah,
making
So
people make the
in
labor decisions. Yeah.
in researching my Final Fantasy videos, I've learned that Kawazu really likes thinking outside the box. He loves tabletop, and he really likes coming up with interesting and unique systems. So I want Romancing Saga 2 now. Maybe the Steam Winter Sale.
Yeah, I really recommend that. I was singing its
You
praises.
you sold me on it. It
It's
reminded me a little bit of Rogue Legacy, but obviously an RPG and not a roguelike.
yeah, but you know what? There are, especially again, I'm bringing up the remasters in particular because they add a little bit more to this quality of life necessarily. But the coolest thing about Romancing Saga 2 and 3, and even 2 and 3, I would say the most, is with the remasters, they add that concept of death is not necessarily the end, because it's very easy to get stuck on RS2 and RS3 in many ways. Even with the remaster, it's easy to get stuck and
The
find your
event flags are so brutal in those
Yeah.
games.
Oh,
And
it's only
especially.
$25.
Termite Queen, Nurvuss, you
Termite
know this.
Queen.
Termite Queen get you. And so they added this cool concept where you can start a new game plus at any point. So the new game plus isn't as overpowered as it is in Saga Frontier. So you don't retain HP or anything like that. You just retain your techs and your equipment, which is broken, sure.
Get that Dragon Quarter DNA.
Yeah, exactly. And God, we were talking about a game that's really similar. Oh, Valkyrie Profile Covenant of the Plume, very similar to this too.
Yeah.
Then that's one I didn't put on my list, but I would really like to talk about in a little bit. But so even if you get, my thing is, if you play RS2, Andrew, and you get stuck, just let it be, brother. Just start over again. That's the point. The game is actually quite short, critical path, if you look at it from like a big picture perspective. So I love that concept. I think that's so sick, and you definitely do see a lot of tabletop RPG stuff or pen and paper RPG stuff in that.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, this actually brings up a good question, is like, what kind of things do you guys think that like tabletop RPG stuff does better in this topic than, games? Anything that comes to mind?
Ooh. I would say that with tabletop RPGs, there are no limits. Like, even the systems aren't a limit, because I liken it to playing a sport in real life versus playing a sports video game. In real life, there are rules to the sport. In a video game, there are laws. In real life, you can bend those rules, you can break those rules, you can do whatever you want. But in a video game, it's set in the system. You can't go outside the system, because there's nothing outside of that. It literally breaks.
Unless you're like, I don't know, like building a working calculator in Dwarf Fortress. It's the extreme example. But
or making Pokemon Red work in Minecraft, which
Yeah,
has
yeah.
been done. I don't know if you've seen that.
I have. I completely forgot about that. But I mean, yeah, there's a great element of improv to tabletop and pen and paper, and that's the best DM is the one who it presents you with a scenario, and then when you say, well, what if we tried this, and they say, okay, yeah, let's see what happens. Let's
Let's
do something there.
It's literally like at night at the improv. You never say no. You say yes and.
Yeah, that's such a fucking good point. And I also want to say that I made an assumption, Nurvuss, on you. You are wearing a Steely Dan Unknown Pleasures t-shirt, so I
That's
automatically assumed that you played D&D. So I'm glad that I was correct in this assumption.
I haven't played D&D in so long.
But no, I think the concept of no limits is really, really good. And what about, I guess I didn't even really think about this, but what about MMOs? How do you guys think MMOs deal with this kind of thing? Or even, I'll toss this to you, Andrew, because you played Phantasy Star Universe, and God knows why you did for so long. But I'm really curious as to
I only played for about 180 hours, 200 hours over the course of like a few months, and that's just because like someone else was paying my sub for a bit. I was a teenager.
That's a lifetime, in my
Oh,
opinion.
I mean, we loved it. We loved it. Yes, I acknowledge that the game is honestly kind of crap, but I don't care. I just
Literally.
bought my physical copy, for God's sake. What the fuck is it?
But I love the concept of, like, there's that old adage in MMO discussion that you don't pay my sub, but in this case, somebody literally pays your sub, and I think damn, that makes you a sub. Fuck. But yeah, no, anything in that game that you think might stand out? Because I played Universe for a little bit. I played probably around the same number of hours that you played, but that was years ago, so I don't know.
So I can't really attest to like the themes of Universe because I never really played much of the story.
Oh.
Yeah, like my friend was just like, "Hey, Phantasy Star Universe is a cool online game. I'll pay your subscription because I've been talking it up for a long time to you." And I'm just like, "Fuck yeah, let's play an MMO." And I did play like the first 2 or 3 chapters of the story on my own time at some point, and I was just like, "Yep, this is definitely 2006 Sonic Team."
What even is that?
Oh, a
Who even
mess.
is Sonic Team at that
Yeah,
point in time?
because
Sure.
all the developers had
Shambles.
left. Yeah. So that's like after.
Yeah, I mean, but
Huh.
I
Yeah,
do
follow
want to.
people, not studios.
I want to. That said, I am willing to shell out the money to get Ambition of the Illuminist for PS2 just so I can play that open world by myself.
Okay, first off, that game, that expansion makes that game. The fact that you played vanilla for 180 hours.
Oh no, I did play vanilla. By that point, you could only play Ambition.
Oh, okay, yeah. I was like, because damn, that adds a lot to that experience. So
Ambition. When Ambition came out, it was free on Xbox 360. If you wanted to play online, you had to get Ambition. It wasn't no extra cost. So.
Nurvuss, any contributions to the MMO discussion here?
I'm honestly not much of an MMO guy. I mean, I'm thinking about, I don't know how it ties into tabletop and making your own fun. I mean, like I played a bunch of I am ashamed to admit this. I played a bunch of Ragnarok Online back in the day, and that is an MMO that has nothing in it. You want to grind for hats that have a 0.01% drop rate?
Yep.
I mean, there's nothing else in there except that. So you gotta, I don't know, you gotta make up your own fun, have some fun with some friends, maybe.
So Ragnarok is Team Fortress 2 with a sub.
Yeah.
That's a really good,
and with an anime that I saw ads for on all my Dragon Ball Z DVDs, I guess.
Yeah, that's about right. I don't know. I'm a Final Fantasy 14 neophyte. I like it a lot. I've only just started Stormblood, so
I technically So when I said that I had never finished a Final Fantasy before doing this retrospective, that was a little bit of a lie. I did finish the Realm Reborn main story of 14 a while ago, but asterisk. I skipped a lot of the cutscenes in the second half just so I could do endgame stuff with a friend.
Everybody did.
Yeah, so I don't count that clearing of 14. And when I get to doing 14, I'm gonna do like a little like private thing so I can play as much of 1.x as I possibly can by myself, and then I'm gonna do current 14 with a whole new character, blank slate.
So 14 to me has a lot of really cool like narrative things that like where that intersection is really cool, like in the story. So like there's parts Nurvuss, you're around this time in it, but like where you switch perspectives and play as a different character, or like it puts you in like a really weird what do you call it, solo duty, where you have to like do specific things and all that kind of stuff. There's a couple stuff like attunement quests in early ARR that like really made you just like you have to work toward this goal. But I will say, and I love FF14. It's probably one of the best games I've ever played. But it does a very, very poor job of integrating what would be considered classically tabletop RPG concepts into MMOs. Even a game that looks like a broken cartoon like World of Warcraft, I think did a way better job of integrating that. But
yeah, the Blizzard stuff never appealed to me, so I've got no experience with that. It's literally just Ragnarok and 14 for me.
So I guess you're feeling pretty vindicated about never caring about Blizzard stuff by
yeah,
this point.
Yeah, I mean, I feel for my friends who have a lot of history with Blizzard. I'll say that much, But,
yeah, and I haven't.
But I've sidestepped that one.
Good. No, honestly, good for you, man. For real.
Yeah.
And
the most experience I have with Blizzard is I played a bit of Overwatch in like 2018, 2019. I enjoyed my time. I don't miss it really. Well, I kind of do, but I'm not willing to play Overwatch 2 for a multitude of reasons.
Yeah,
I
everybody's got to draw their own line, you know.
Yep. Um, it's like supporting companies that really fucking suck, but like you really want to play stuff. Like I'll probably get that Silent Hill 2 remaster. I hate Konami. I don't hate Konami for the same reasons I would hate somebody like J.K. Rowling or Blizzard, you know. But like,
Oh, there is a big difference between like normal, like banal corporate evil and then doing very loud evil.
Actively trying to hurt people.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like it always comes down to like, yeah, I feel like you should probably keep your ear to the ground as best you can and like try to be the smartest consumer that you can.
Yeah, be informed.
Yeah, but at the same time, like you know, there's you can't look at it like systemically. You can't be like, oh, well, there's no ethical consumption under capitalism, so I don't give a fuck. Because to me, that is like you're just part of the problem at that point. Like
exactly, the whole thing with there is no ethical consumption under capitalism isn't who cares, just do whatever because it all goes to shitty places anyway. It's no, like do your best because do your best, and if you simply can't afford getting groceries at like the nice grocery store across town and you have to settle for Walmart because of location and money, then no one's going to blame you.
yeah, and it's like how do I describe this? So yeah, if you kind of give in to that concept, nothing ever gets done, right? So you have to sort of pick your battles, right? Like
Right.
a really good
Absolutely.
example of this is like the Bayonetta 3 voice actor thing, right? There are some people who saw
That's
that
a
original
kerfluffle,
video.
though.
Yeah. So somebody saw, a lot of people, myself included, saw that video and saw a woman in trouble, right? And then, which is a famous, I'll bring another cinematic reference. That's a famous David Lynch quote for all of his films. So she presented herself like a David Lynch protagonist, but in reality, um, she was like, I don't know, an Ari Aster film villain, you know? Like, and so, like, that being said, I don't think there's anything wrong with being like, hey, right now, I'm making the decision to not buy this game until I hear more, right? And
Right.
I feel like I'll tie this into our topic because I feel like that concept, that theme, the small battles kind of thing is so underutilized in RPGs, right? Like how many RPGs can you guys think of where it doesn't end in like saving the world or killing God or fighting
Mother
the
3.
Mother 3 is a really good example, yes. Even Earthbound, right? Because, like, I don't really remember what Gygas's endgame was right now in this moment.
He's kind of
I
like
I
an
think
idiot god, like
yeah,
Cthulhu-esque, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
like what Gygas was trying to do is kind of irrelevant. It's what Gygas's presence was doing. Granted, I haven't played much of Earthbound, so I can't say too much, but I've seen a lot of videos on it, so I have a grasp.
Right.
Um, but yeah, like whatever Gygas wanted to do was like abstract-ish. I don't even think Gygas was even really like fully in tune with themselves at that point. So like I'd still see the battle with Gygas as like your fighting god.
God. Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
Mhm.
What about like more mundane kind of stories, or like maybe it starts out mundane too. Like, I think Trails in the Sky 1 is a good example of this because like
Yeah.
I mean, what it ends up in is a completely different animal for sure. But like the way Sky starts out, it's actually very boring to people, myself included, a little bit because it's like doing a thing. There's the Bracer Guild. You really want to be part of the Bracer Guild. You're doing mundane side quests. You're helping grandma's dog. You know that kind of stuff. And like, yeah, it gets bigger and there's like conspiracy shit, but it's not like I am the evil god. Baltheus, and I am controlling you all from the shadows. Everyone is my robot slave. There's not like you don't fight like you're a manifestation of your mother that's like a naked Amano drawing, and then like amongst the backdrop of like 6 galaxies exploding. It's a little bit more low key, right? And
I just thought of like between those two extremes, Mass Effect 3, because you do have the Reaper invasion, but you're not fighting them. You're fighting their forces on the ground to a point, but the last thing that you do, the last interactions you make, are movement and decision making, not combat.
yeah, I'm both in your corner and out of your corner for Mass Effect 3 because like
I mean, like that's why I say it's like in between them.
Yeah, because I see. Okay, so I think Mass Effect 3 does the moving boxes while the world is ending trope a little bit.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah.
But like I think that like if Mass Effect 3 was to me what it could do to be a better game is if it could make that concept more believable. And I'll tell you what game does that is Mass Effect 1. Mass Effect 1 does such a fucking good job of small narratives, small arcs that like contribute to a bigger whole without being like too ridiculous, right?
Yeah.
Like, I mean,
Mass Effect, like just too many branches kept popping off, and they had to start like really culling them by the end, and that's why I think Mass Effect 1's honestly the best one.
Same.
My man.
Nurvuss, are you a Mass Effect guy?
I don't know. I liked 1, I liked 2, and then I didn't care enough to play 3.
I actually have a story. So before I got into Mass Effect, a good friend of mine, he had been following it since the beginning, and when 3 came out, for whatever reason, he decided that he was going to start 3 fresh and not import his character from the first 2 games. And because of that, he was just curious. It locks you out of a lot of choices because you don't have that built-up reputation and
it makes a lot of the worst choices for you, right? Like
it does.
A whole bunch of characters, huh?
It does in spades. And the thing that broke him, the thing that got him to set down the controller, cry, and never pick it up again, was with the Quarians and the Geth, when you have to choose one or the other. And he chose the Geth, and Tali just swan dives off a cliff, fucking kills herself. That broke him. He still, to this day, like a decade later, has not finished Mass Effect 3.
I have a lot of feelings on Mass Effect 3 that I don't want to go too into the weeds here, but
understandable.
Like I don't completely hate it. I'll say that much. I don't think it's a piece of shit or anything. It's just like it's just such a disappointing thing.
I feel like a lot of games that come out in the last 10 years, like Mass Effect 3 or Pokemon Sword and Shield, that people say, "Oh, this is a fucking awful game." I'm just like, dude, if you think this game is bad, I envy you, because you've probably never played a bad game.
Yeah, you could play Monarch,
you could play Monarch.
or Beyond the Beyond, man, which that was such a bummer game. That is a very big bummer.
That's a tough one. That's a real tough one.
It hurts. But yeah, speaking of which, we're talking about Mass Effect decisions. Very big thing in this subject is decision making, right? Like, if you're trying to talk about integrating themes with gameplay, how do you do decision making? The weight of it. Getting locked into an ending or something because you chose a dialogue choice, or in what's a really good example of a game with multiple endings that really kind of like makes you feel the weight.
Fallout
really good. Yeah,
pretty good at that.
Yeah,
so good.
Mainline SMT. I mean, but mainline SMT kind of has the same issue that I feel a lot of BioWare games have, and that's, using Jade Empire as the example. It's, you can tell what's the open palm and the closed fist.
Right. That's such a fucking good thing. Yeah. And it definitely, yes. And so that goes back to a little bit of what we were talking about, like developers sort of forcing you to feel a way, right? Like the
Fallout
man
3.
yeah, oh yeah. The man behind the curtain, just saying, "Hey, you have all this freedom, but this is the way, brother. This is the way that we choose." And I think SMT is a really good example of this because um, it always feels like the law ending is the way, right? And it
You think
just,
so? Really?
yeah, I think so because it's like,
Interesting.
I mean, okay, well, you have five, which I actually five's a bad
I haven't actually,
example.
admittedly, I haven't finished 5 yet. I really need to go back and see that through.
I hesitate to talk about story on five because it's like talking about the story of a diet cola. Like it's like it only
It's
goes so
not
far.
there.
It's not there. It's not
It's
there.
not there.
It's big head, no thoughts to
Mm.
me is SMT five. But like yeah, no, I feel like SMT does a really good job of making you feel the decisions that you made while you're playing the game. Maybe not necessarily the resolution, but like you choose law or you choose chaos, and you're locked into some games. Will lock you into not being able to recruit demons of the other
Mm.
alignment, right?
Yeah, they kind of moved away from that now, haven't they?
Yeah, which is kind of a bummer, but like I get it,
I
right?
like the I like the tactileness of having to choose your allies, and it makes them feel more like they're more than just grist for the fusion mill, even if they're still just grist for the fusion mill.
Me playing Persona 5. I'm sorry, Arsene.
Yeah, our son got it, man. There's nothing that we can do. Um, but yeah, no, I think that kind of stuff is really interesting. Again, we'll bring up BioWare games and Mass Effect one particular because that's like the only game that really makes you feel like, oh man, like because I did all the achievements in that back in the day, and so I cannot stand being the bad guy. I can't stand it. Um, it makes
Oh
me
yeah, it's tough. It's tough for me.
hurts. It
I
hurts,
don't want to
man.
hurt my little pixel pals.
Yeah, and it's like
It's absurd, but it's tough. Yeah.
I'm not one to ever take moral high ground necessarily. But like there are in some video games, man, I just do that. You have the power to be. It's a different context in video games because we were talking a little bit about this too about like the limits that the medium has. But like with video games, like I have the power. I believe in my gamer skills to do this thing, right? I think I can do it. In a lot of ways, video game worlds are idealized, right? In our world, like there are a lot of dynamics that like you can't in an ideal setting you might not agree with, but in the concept of like a video game, it's different. So like it's almost like utopia. You can't argue like uh political concepts. If we lived the context of arguing political concepts in a utopia is so much different than now, right? Like where it's borderline dystopia, the whole thing changes. So like when you make decisions like this, it really kills me, man. When you make a decision that's like, oh, kill this guy when you could just, you know, use your telekinesis to change his mind or something, right? Like, and
Which is the more evil option, though, you know?
Yeah, I feel
that's
like
that's
I
true,
feel
yeah.
like that
Live on your
option.
knees.
I feel like that a lot of these options like get more and more cut out and choices narrowed as the technology has advanced because
They have to account for
like
more and animate it and voice it and all that jazz, right?
Yeah,
yeah,
of course.
exactly. And then obviously because with video games the only way to really sell it, because you can't advertise game feel, you have to advertise it with visuals. So there's a push for better and sleeker graphics to one up the previous generation or the previous installment in a series. For example, not an RPG, but Halo 4 2012. I'm a big Halo guy. 2012, that game pushed the Xbox 360 to its limits. I know people whose Xbox 360 broke because of that game. They only pushed the graphics so hard because they had to make it look noticeably better than Halo 3 and Halo Reach. Doesn't
Those
make the
360s were going to break anyway, though.
Yeah, those heat
yeah
sinks. Those heat sinks were struggling.
yeah. So when it comes to an RPG, like, oh, you're going to make a sequel to an RPG, well, you're going to have to make it look better because otherwise, it's harder to sell it to people who aren't already like the core players, like the people who already know that they are going to buy it. And the more money goes into these miscellaneous things that aren't necessarily the gameplay, the writing, etc., the more stuff has to be left off, the more options have to be chopped out. The result is Fallout 4.
Yeah, and this is a bit of a sidebar, but I think that's a really, really good point. Do you guys think? Maybe I'm just being devil's advocate with this, but is it like? Do you think we've hit like the summit or the plateau rather of a multitude of choices in a game? Because like you were saying, a game like Baldur's Gate, a game like ME1, even Dragon Age 1.
We had the plateau decades ago.
Yeah, and it's like those games had a lot of choices. Even then, you can scrutinize the true liberty of your decisions in those games, sure. But like compared to a lot of games now, like look at fucking Horizon, man. I actually really enjoy Horizon, but why even give me choices, bro? Just
Well,
don't.
that's from the Ubisoft school, isn't it?
Yeah. Like
I barely played Horizon. I forgot that there was even like picking dialogue, but like I agree. It's like adding RPG elements into action games like Horizon, I think does. Like,
yeah.
why?
Yeah, well, actually, I had an argument last night about this. Is that like the way that Horizon integrates RPG elements is like it's not there. It doesn't actually really do anything. You have numbers and stats, sure, but you have numbers and stats in different ARPG or in action games. Period. So I'm of the camp that Horizon is not an RPG. Like you don't make decisions really. Like you don't pursue a path. There's no like
You
character
don't play a role.
progression. Right, you don't play a role. The character progression is fucking linear. It's more linear than just numbers going up. Like
And a lot of RPGs see that as well. I mean, Dragon
Yeah,
Quest is a real egregious.
Final
You
Fantasy
know,
4.
yeah, just no. And
Yeah.
that's another really good concept is like is there L word dissonance between like freedom of choice and just numbers going up, because that's a huge thing. A lot of people, again, I always pick on like
big difference between W and JRPGs, huh?
yes,
The emphasis on
The
money.
philosophy, yeah. I think, and that's something I've noted for a while. Like with Western RPGs, there tends to be more of a focus on letting the player do what they want and define their character and their place in the world, whereas JRPGs err more towards we are going to tell you a deep and involving story with preset characters who, to some degree or another, you can customize on a mechanical level.
Mhm. Yeah, and then you have, I feel like the intersection there is I'll bring up Saga games again, man, because Saga games are so good with that. You have the archetype character, right? The barbarian, and like yeah, his stats skew a certain way, but like with the freedom of Saga's skills system, he could be whatever, like is it efficient?
If you really
No.
want to make a barbarian mage, yeah.
Yeah. Right. But like I think
You know
it's
what I'm doing in Final Fantasy V now?
there you go.
No, not really, not really.
But also, by extension of that, is if everyone could end up as whatever they want, whatever you want, if every role is viable for each character, is that just homogenization? What is
Final
that?
Fantasy VI. That's
Yes.
Final Fantasy 2.
functioning. Yeah,
Final
there's
Fantasy
that as
2.
well.
Yep. Yeah. That's even more.
I think
2, it just
that
kind of happens by accident, huh?
Yeah.
Eh.
2. Yeah. True. True.
well, to be fair, 2 does kind of set their stats to a point where they kind of naturally are supposed to go into
Yeah.
certain roles. Whether or not you want to homogenize them is up to you. And as a player with limited resources at the start, you're going to want to
Yeah. You get
define them
yeah.
better.
Yeah.
But
You get.
I think that yes, there is the potential to homogenize, but I think that's dependent on the player's willingness to give their party members similar skills and have them overlap, and the ease of which it would and the ease of which they can do so. Final Fantasy VI makes it really easy to teach everyone basically everything. For example, Final Fantasy II, by the time you can make everyone homogenous, they've already kind of been set in their roles, and it takes a long time and a lot of effort to make them feel more similar.
Right. And damn. Really cool concept. I do need to dial it back a bit just because we are limited to 90 minutes. And I do want to
Mhm.
say, uh, before we get into like the last topic I want to touch on, I just want to kind of name drop a couple games and talk a little bit about how themes and gameplay intersect. And I don't mean to cut you off too. It just
Oh, you're
just
cool.
just one of those things. So we got Star Ocean 6. We got the Duma thing that lets you kind of move around the environment. It's a high technology and a low technology world, which I think is really interesting. Classic example of themes gameplay intersection is FF8, the junction system and the GFs. There's a plot point with that's really important.
Too
Uh,
much time thinking about your GF that you forgot your friends. It's happened to all of us.
exactly, and I
I
had
have I
Diablos.
have thoughts about 8.
Yeah, yeah, and Diablos is the thing I had junction to me the most. So does that Goth GF? I don't know. Um, Lunar
I'm a
Silver.
real sicko. I think 8 is up in the tops. Yeah, up in the
I,
tops for me.
I'm with you, man. I love 8. It's not one of my favorites, but I feel like 8 like it gets a bad rap. It gets a bad rap. Is it a
Oh
messy
yeah.
game? Yeah, dude. That's like ooh. Uh,
My thoughts, like I'm kind of right down the middle. I think the stuff it does well does really well. Stuff it doesn't do well, it's really messy. I'm more positive than negative on it. I'll just leave it at that right now.
cool, cool. Yeah, I like that. I like that. Very succinct. Um, Silver Star, Lunar Silver Star has a really interesting integration with an item that you have since the beginning of the game that you're always kind of looking at your menu that you have to use. It's integrated into the leitmotif of the game. There's a lot of I don't want to spoil anything too.
Into the music, you say?
Yeah, yes, and I mean, God, there's
You don't use it after the final boss. That's well, that's a trip back to the title screen.
yeah, exactly. And
Thank you, Victor Ireland.
yeah,
No,
any
that's good stuff though. I really like that. I really like that in Lunar.
any examples that you guys want to quickly spit fire out like a fucking machine gun of drops?
Hmm.
You guys got on called about talked about Persona 5, uh, Kingdom Hearts. Um,
I do have uh, one example off the top of my head without looking at any notes that I've prepared. Kingdom Hearts 2's drive forms, you can only access them, with the exception of limit form, but that's limit form, by you know using your friend's power. If Goofy's down or out of your party, you can't use Valor form. Donald's down or out, can't use Wisdom form. You need 2 party members for Master and Final forms. Like your friends are literally your power there, and that's the message. That's kind of the whole thesis of Kingdom Hearts. If you can say there's a thesis to Kingdom Hearts, I love Kingdom Hearts. That's not a dig. Your friends are your power, and Kingdom Hearts 2 does that literally.
word,
It's
yeah.
like a more it's like a more wholesome version of what's that game? Conception, please deliver my baby. That Spike Chunsoft
Yeah,
RPG.
yeah.
I'm just messing around.
Damn, that's a fucking deep cut, dude. That is so deep. Damn. I almost dropped like a Stan Brackage reference on this podcast, but that one is deeper. I got a really good one. I mentioned it before, real quick before I hand this off to you, Nurvuss, is Valkyrie Profile Covenant of the Plume. This game has
Mm.
a mechanic that like basically you sacrifice a party member a la like Fire Emblem. It's permadeath. It's gone. You get insane buffs for that mission. You get to blitz through that mission. And this game is kind of hard, by the way. Like until you really understand the systems, it's difficult, challenging even. You get insane buffs, and then your main character gets a skill that he could use whenever you want. So really, really cool integration of stuff. And then constantly, the game is challenging on purpose because it is telling you, use the plume, sacrifice your friends. This is harder than it has to be, but it doesn't have to be this difficult if you just do. Like it does the game's difficulty and layout and map design is all there to provide that voice in the back of your head. And Dragon Quarter's like this too. I haven't really played Dragon Quarter. I
Dragon
want to be a
Quarter,
poser.
yeah. And got a re-release recently. Soul Nomad, another strategy
Mm-hmm.
game, a Nipponichi, where you're
Yeah.
possessed by that death god, and you can call upon his powers to set things on a real nasty path if you want to.
That's a good one, actually. I haven't really played that game. I have
I've
it
only
on
played a little bit of
Switch.
it. Yeah.
Yeah. Any other ones that you can think of off the top of your head that we didn't cover?
There was something just on the tip of my tongue. Is it gone? I got too excited thinking about Soul Nomad.
Something no one has
we were talking
ever
about
said
use
before.
the plume. That's right. Use the plume. That was it. Did you play? This is kind of using. It's like use the plume, but they bungled it. Did you play Fuga? Memories of Steel. Did either of you play Fuga?
No, no.
No.
The latest Little Tail Bronx game. What was it? The middle one's Solitarobo. What's the first one? Tail Concerto.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
Tail
yeah. Okay, that's
Concerto.
the only one in
Those
that
little
series.
furry
Yeah.
dogs and cats. This one it's sort of World War II setting, and you've got a massive tank, and you've got 12 kids, like 6 dogs, 6 cats, piloting this massive tank, and you got a big cannon on it where you can win a boss battle immediately by loading one of your adorable little animal children into the cannon and firing them off in a blaze of glory. At which point, like the other members of your entourage will be like, "Well, where did my big brother go?" And that all feels like really deliberate and great. And then, like right after you do it, you get a tutorial tip that was like, "Hey, if you don't like the way that battle just went, don't think too much about this. You can rewind time and go back to before you launched them and see if you can win without sacrificing them." It's like,
Jeez.
oh, you really just undercut what you made, because they force you to do it the first time. And I guess, like, okay, they're trying to show you that, to show it to you as an example, but I mean, like, I don't know. I guess they want you to get that character back if you didn't want to actually launch them. But there's got to be a better way. There's got to be a better way.
So, just
No,
based
that
off of this,
really took me out of it.
that sounds so interesting, but that sounds like one of those cases where like the game has a really cool concept or mechanic,
And no confidence in it.
yes, and then the game sucks. It's like a steamy high five with a really cool concept. Like,
It's a pretty fun little tactical game, but I really just completely made me just feel, okay, this just doesn't matter at all.
yeah. Cool. I had another thing on my list of things to talk about that we didn't really get a chance. So I'm going to try to just quickly run through it. Is a really interesting integration of the themes and gameplay is through currency in video games, like RPGs specifically. Let's see, you got Live Alive having different currency for each little thing. Like in the prehistory area, there's not like money in the same way. You trade items and you get them from drops. There's like a stupid mini game. My best example of this is SMT, especially early SMT with Magnetite. Is that what it's called? Am I forgetting the
There's
name?
Magnetite and Maca.
Okay, Maca.
There's
Yeah,
two
yeah, yeah.
currencies.
Maca's the money. Yeah.
Yeah.
But Magnetite is a currency that you used, and you don't really do this anymore, really, in the newer games. But like basically, like to have you use it to summon demons and keep them out. And I don't know if Soul Hackers 2 does this, but the first one does, and that game
No,
is
it doesn't at all. Soul Hackers is completely wireframe. Soul Hackers 2, it's completely wireframe. It's from the Persona 5 school where you're not summoning demons at all. I like Soul Hackers 2. I'm a Soul Hackers 2 apologist. It's way better than I thought it would be. It's probably better than it has any right to be. It's not great. It's no Soul Hackers 1, but
fair
I dig
enough.
it.
I would say an example of this would be, and I keep bringing this series up, but it's just got good examples of stuff. Fallout, specifically Fallout 1, where most of the Fallouts do this. They use caps as the currency, bottle caps. And it's contextualized within the world as being, they are sturdy, they are not easily reproduced, they're plentiful without being too common. And the way that they're given value within the actual context of the world is that the hub, these traders, they have a whole gigantic supply of fresh water, and the caps are a fiat currency. They represent a certain amount of fresh water. And then New Vegas kind of goes a bit deeper with that. There's more different kinds of money. You have the NCR dollar, you've got Legion currency, and there's a quest for the for Alice McLafferty, where they find out, hey, we just got some caps came in. They were like brand new. Somebody is like making new bottle caps. Like this has to be stopped. And it kind of actually deals a little bit with the idea of counterfeit currency in a post apocalypse. And it's just an interesting way of like having the world bleed into the mechanics, even if only aesthetically.
I love Fallout 1 so fucking much, and it's been
Same.
so long since I played it. And yeah, based off of that too, I have two more examples real quick that I'm going to fire off. And it's Ys 8 doesn't have currency necessarily. You trade items versus resources.
I was
It's your
hoping we
island.
might see like an economic system at like the Dana flashbacks, and I guess they're like, I don't know, you're giving stuff to your little fairy companion.
Yeah, you have
But I
like the
thought that would have
essences.
been, I thought that would have been kind of neat if they
Yeah,
showed like
yeah.
a working economy in her society. But sorry, please go ahead.
No, I mean, they really had was like nipple covers too. So, like
Oh yeah,
currency was so unimportant when
oh, they're
you're.
kind of like bottle caps, huh?
Yeah, yeah, I guess so. Yeah, that's a good point. Is Fallout are Fallout and Ys in the same world? I don't know. Um, Last one, and I think it's probably the most interesting, albeit annoying, almost obtrusive, is Secret of Evermore, because
Oh
each
yeah.
like area in that game is different time period, so they have different currency, and you can trade up currency from one to the other, but it's on a 1-to-1 rate. So like, it feels like sometimes you go to Mexico to get stuff for cheap with your US dollar, and then sometimes you go to Iceland and then you get boned with your dollar. So like um yeah, so I think that was really cool. Unfortunately, it's also used as like media, or what do you call it, reagents for some of the alchemy system. But like, play Secret of Evermore. Appreciate this game. Nobody appreciates this game. It's so lonely in its little box. Just so sad. Anything else, Nervous? Anything that you got in terms of
Yeah, actually,
currency?
the currency and trade discussion has reminded me of one of my favorite bits in Shin Megami Tensei 1, where like the first part of that game, you are wandering around suburban Tokyo, and you can grind for money, and you can have all the money in the world. Spoilers, the entire world goes through nuclear assured mutual destruction at that game's halfway point. You end up in the underworld, and you have to go through a really
Yeah.
unbearable mandala dungeon to escape. And when you get out, several decades have passed, and you come across a random dude who asks like, "Hey, buddy, can you spare a dime?" And you pull out your big wad of yen, and he says, "What is this, idiot? The world ended years ago. This doesn't have any value." And then that's it. That's
So
it. No more money for you.
I had SMT on my list, and I was like, I'm gonna talk about that one in particular, and I'm really fucking glad that you picked up what I failed to deliver on. So thank you. Also, SMT1 rules. Play that game if
It
you.
does. It's a real sandpaper experience, but I love it.
Yeah, it's just such a good. Same with SMT2, but because I like SMT2 more, but that mid game is one of the most painful mid games I've ever experienced with the fetch quest, where you have to. Oh.
Oh, yeah, and like having to put your stats up to win the dance off, and a lot of stuff that they just, yeah, that's mean. It's a really mean game.
God, I feel like I was trying so hard not to venture into, because I feel like I could devote 90 minutes to how SMT does this, this whole
Hmm.
concept. But I really wanted to talk a little bit more about currency. Unfortunately, we are out of time. I think this is a really good subject to talk about in the future. And I'm sorry if I am cutting anybody off. There's always so much more to say. One of the unfortunate side effects of this podcast, doing it with people who I enjoy talking, with whom I enjoy talking, is that just never. It could go on, man. It could go for 3 hours. I don't know, and I don't want to do that to anybody. But
The movie never ends. It goes on
and
and on and on and on.
the Cerulean Skies podcast, that's just Empire, the Empire State Building thing. Andy Warhol's back again. He's going to give us 17 hours of content. Speaking of content, though, let's do one last little plug here before we wrap up. Andrew, we'll start with you.
Yeah, you can find me on YouTube where I have my retrospectives. I only have 6 videos up right now. 3 of them are Final Fantasy, 2 of them are Halo, and 1 of them is a Simpsons episode. That channel is just my name, Andrew Bluett, Bluett. That's blue with 2 T's on the end. And you can find me on Twitter at Lord Drubie, LORDDRUB, DRUBIE. I'm also same YouTube name as I am on Patreon. That's it. Yeah, you'll find links in the thing down there in videos. Yeah,
Cool.
that's socials.
And Nurvuss, how about you?
Yeah, I am Nurvuss on Twitch and YouTube. You can see me streaming all sorts of games of various quality on Tuesdays, Fridays, and Sundays. We're playing Disaster Report 4 at the moment. We hit an Easter egg that allowed us to rename the game Disaster Report 5. There's a lot happening there. Also follow me on YouTube at Nurvuss. I'm really just starting to make moves there, so it's kind of in its infancy. But I've got a couple of videos up. I've got a video coming out very soon about the obscure PS1 horror game Hell Knight. So if you want to learn all about what's going on beneath Tokyo in 1998, I'll have you covered very soon. And you can follow me on Twitter at Furnace, but I mostly just shitpost.
Hell yeah. Thank you guys so fucking much. This was an absolute joy. This is
It's a real treat.
Thank you. This is great. And I appreciate you, especially Nurvuss, taking your time to be out here late as fuck.
I tried to be a good podcast host, and then I listened to last week's episode live on Twitch, and it was like, oh, we're actually bringing this an hour back because of a UK guest, and I was like, oh, I fucked it.
Yeah, thanks, dude. You suck. Thanks a lot for ruining the whole thing.
I really
Andrew,
appreciate it. Thank you.
No, thank you. And Andrew, thanks a lot, man. This is all just a psyop for him to get me to watch his Final Fantasy retrospectives, which I will do.
Which you're gonna do in like 2 minutes.
Yeah, you know what? Not tonight, because that right after this, in about 20 minutes, we have Silent Hill 2 on this channel. Kelly is continuing her playthrough of Silent Hill 2. So if you guys want to see somebody literally hyperventilate and possibly pass out from fear in real time, she will be doing that on our channel. So thanks everybody for hanging out. Thanks for chat, for being lovely as always. And again, thanks to my guests. This is really cool topic. I would definitely love to explore this more in the future. So if you guys like what you see, if you see what you like, let us know in the Discord or any kind of review or whatever feedback. I mean, I don't need to say that because everybody does it, or they don't do it. Thanks again, guys. Have a good night, and we'll see you next week.